Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the SFC interviews here with former goalkeeper Phil Wilson today. So, how's things, Phil?
Evening. Yeah, good, thank you. Obviously, strange times, but fortunate to be able to keep working. So, yeah, no, all good.
And of course, what were the main reasons behind you wanting to come and join up with Stevenage?
I think I felt at the time that because I'd been with Oxford United previously, I wanted to kind of still have that feeling of I was still trying to obviously make it as a professional, and felt that Stevenage would be a good opportunity to progress a bit further, and kind of be more involved with the first team. So yeah, I also spoke to Gary Phillips a couple of times beforehand, and had been training a couple of times at the end of the previous season, and enjoyed that. So I felt as well with Gary there that I'd progress.
And of course, it was yourself and Mark Westhead as well. So what was it like, competing against Mark? And, was it quite, what was it like for you, of course, to not just compete against him, but to obviously remain motivated as well? And, in the hope that you'd get on, I suppose, at some stage, obviously, and get a bit of game time, yeah.
Yeah, it was hard. I've not any point in my career have I kind of done well not playing, and it's particularly kind of when at that time that was my main focus and my main job. So you kind of build up to wanting to play on a Saturday, and when you don't, it's frustrating. And obviously as well, being a 19-20-year-old at the time, mentally probably not in the best place to deal with that all the time, and I probably didn't deal with it particularly well at the time either. But that said, as I say, working with Westy was great, and I mean, he lived in Wickham. I stayed in Hitchin in Diggs most of the week to start with. Actually ended up moving back to Oxford kind of just before Christmas, and travelling in with Westy as well. So I had a good relationship with him off the pitch as well as on, and he was always great in terms of helping me along as well. And when I had my opportunities, he was always very supportive of me in those times. So yeah, that was it. He was great to work with.
So you were involved regularly in the Matchday Squad. So what was that like to kind of be involved in and around the camp on a match day, and sort of just kind of bide it out and wait your time? Yeah.
I'd say it was frustrating more than anything else, and that's not. I think as well, kind of again looking back now, I totally understand it. And I mean, I'm involved in South Counties East football with Beckenham Town now on a coaching staff, and even at that level, to think of putting a 19-year-old regularly in, you have to put a lot of faith and a lot of trust in a young goalkeeper. So whilst at the time thinking that I was ready to play in and out regular first team football, I probably wasn't. But I mean, as I say, just to be in around it was all good experience. And again, sadly, the results didn't really go for the team at the time, and it was a real shame because it was a really good group of players. And
that was under Wayne Turner's leadership as well, wasn't it? So what was Wayne like, as a manager? Yeah.
He was good. I think it was a tough time for him because I think we started pre-season doing 2 nights a week, and then very early in the season it was apparent that obviously to compete in the conference, even then a lot of the top teams were then full time training every day. So if you were kind of being ambitious, and obviously even then kind of the setup Stevenage had, and Shepherdbury was nearly finished at the time. We got to train it toward the end of that season. Everything was there, and you'd look at it and it would feel a bit strange that the club was operating on a 2 nights a week, and then it changed to 3 mornings early in that season. I think though you've got a few players there that have got kind of full-time jobs and things, and the commitment was difficult. So some players had to move on a little bit earlier, not because of anything they were doing wrong, but just the commitment wasn't right. So it was never really settled for him. at the time. So yeah, I think it was quite tough for him.
And you made your debut for the club, coming on in the 2-2 draw with Yeovil. I think you got about 20 odd minutes or so that day, if I remember correctly. And what was going through your mind that day, coming on? Were you straight away just wanting to impress?
Yeah. I always found it easier. I think it was. I'm trying to think back now, kind of how many games I actually played. But there was probably 2 or 3 games, I think, where I'd come off the bench at some point. I think I had a whole second half against Swansea.
That's right, and the LDV Trophy.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. And I think when you come off the bench, you have less time to kind of get nervous. So actually, when I came on, I was just ready to play, and as you say, just wanted to prove myself. And again, I think when you're in that position as a second choice keeper, you've got to do that every time you go on to try and, because you obviously want to do well in training, but it's not always training that counts. And particularly with a goalkeeper, if you've got a reliable first team goalkeeper, as Westy was, and I mean, to be fair to him at the time as well, when the team wasn't doing so well, he was a regular top performer in that team. So you do just want to take every chance. And I remember kind of particularly with, I think the first full game I played was against Hereford.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And being quite disappointed in, I didn't think I did anything wrong particularly, but I didn't feel like I stood out enough to kind of to make anyone think that I should be knocking on the door as a regular number 1.
Okay, that's fair enough. And of course, competing against Mark and somebody of Mark's quality as well is always going to be very, very difficult. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
So you touched on the game against Swansea there as well, the LDV Trophy. So what was that like? Because obviously we were conference at the time and Swansea were Division 3. So obviously we were competing against the side higher up in the Football League. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. As I say, it was a great night. I might just be making it out now. I feel like we were 1 down at one stage as well, and pulled it back. So I mean, to have that character to come back against the league side as well. It was a great night. Really good feeling. It was nice because there was a couple of boys in the Swansea team that had been players at Oxford that I knew as well. And again, senior players. So they gave me a bit of recognition afterwards, and I remember feeling quite pleased with that. But again, I think probably of all the performances I put in, it was probably the best one.
And of course, that was a fantastic achievement to get through and knock out a league side there. You were signed, we touched on, by Wayne Turner. And actually in that ranks at that time was George Boyd as well, coming through the academy there. So what was Boydie like sort of around the place, and when did you know he was the real deal?
He quite early on, you could see he had a talent. We were in digs together, so I got to know him quite well when he was young. He would have been 15 or 16 at the time, I think. Then, so he was very young, but even at that age, he was regularly coming in and training with the first team players. And I think the fact that there were times he stood out, but at never any point did you think there's a kind of a 16-year-old training with the men's team. He kind of fitted in very well. As you can imagine, at the time he was quite a quiet lad, but at the same time he kind of just got on with things and got on with everyone around him. People were always really good with him as well. Some of the older players, Jude Stelling, I remember always had a lot of time for him. He was a talent even then. You could see it was going to be special. I was really pleased when it kind of did take off for him.
And of course, you got those fantastic moves to Peterborough and of course into the Premier League, and becoming an established international as well. Yeah.
No, he's had a fantastic career.
And then, so was your job as a goalkeeper made easier by sort of having the likes of Robin Trott and Jason Goodliff in front of you as well, sort of commanding centre backs like that?
Yeah, not just kind of on the pitch. Again, both really good people off the pitch. Both had a lot of time in terms of helping young people's development, not just mine. and yeah, they were very commanding centre halves. And as I say, Jason again went on beyond there as well, and had a lot of success before and after Stevenage too. And yeah, and say Trotty as well was great to have around. And say just not just for me, but just for the whole dressing room. They're two really big characters.
And of course, you came on in the 5-0 win that we had over Farnborough as well, and that was just before Wesley came in, wasn't it, as well? And I think it was about a week beforehand, and we went and beat Wesley's Farnborough there, and then then he come to Stevenage and then brought 7 or 8 with him at that time.
The team,
of course, what was that like to play against Graham Wesley's managed sides, I suppose, as well? Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, to beat any of his sides, particularly that Farnborough side, by that score was, I mean, not many people did. Not many people took many points off them. And I think the results, especially at Farnborough, he did fantastic getting them to where they got to, really overachieve with the club, and you kind of see they've not got anywhere near that since he left. And I think as well at the time, if I'm right in thinking, I think John Dreyer took the team that day.
It was his first game as caretaker manager after Wayne had left.
That's right. Yeah. And I think going into that, we're all feeling pretty bad for Wayne and Gow as well. The fact that they'd gone and we hadn't performed to what people expected us to. So it was kind of a result for them as much as anything else. Again, nice to get on.
Absolutely, get some minutes under your belt. So what have we got on here? So what are some of your sort of fondest memories of your time at Stevenage? Of course, there's the Swansea game in there, but is there any other sort of fond memories that you've got about your time at the club?
It was a funny time. I don't think, when I moved there, I didn't really settle in Hitchin. I wasn't playing, but I think had I gone somewhere and been playing regularly, then I might have kind of settled a bit more, but kind of not knowing anyone there. That actual squad, to start with, only Jean-Michel Seguier lived in Stevenage. So there wasn't really any of the players. Once training was done, there wasn't really any of the players or anyone else around. And so I spent quite a bit of time with Ziggy. But if he wasn't around, then I was kind of just on my own a lot, and hence moving back to Oxford. So I think because I didn't settle particularly well in the area, I don't have hugely fond memories of being there. But the football always was kind of, a great bunch of lads all the time. So you kind of just lived for turning up to training each day. But I mean, let's say the Farnborough, coming on in the Farnborough game, and kind of whilst the game was pretty much done and dusted by then, I remember making a couple of good saves towards the end, and kind of doing everything I needed to do that game pretty confidently and assuredly. And let's say the Swansea game in particular was a really good one. And then
I've got a funny story about the Farnborough game as well from a personal level. I basically I had a season ticket at that time, and my dad, I think, was working, and my brother, I wasn't able to attend the game for whatever reason. There was the 3 of us, and it was me and my nan. My nan, who turns 80 this year, came to the game. And she was like, obviously we scored 5, and every time she was like, when somebody scored, she didn't really know what to do. So
you should have bought more often that season if you won 5. Yeah. No. It was a great game, that one, to beat those guys by that many. But yeah, I'm not sure if they knew they were all heading over our way in a couple of weeks. So.
You never know. You're not too sure, obviously. So what have we got to cover now? So have you always been involved in football from a young age, and who were your sort of inspirations as well, sort of growing up?
I mean, I guess I was a little bit later than most. I was about 9 when I kind of joined my first team, having the boys in my hometown in Oxford. and then the year after that, I kind of then did a school district trial and did well in that, and was scouted by Oxford United by 11, and then it was kind of all the way through their system bar a year or two, and fortunately got to play a couple of games in the first team there as well. And yeah, I mean, it's always been a big part of my life. I think that was the other thing at my time at Stevenage, was that transition and kind of wanting to have something else, getting a bit worried and thinking this might not be what I do for the rest of my life. So was always looking kind of half an eye on other things. And when Graham came in, I'd signed up to do a personal training course to start with, and did that for a few years before deciding to go to university and start teaching. But yeah, but I mean, I've always played all through that time. Again, by a couple of years here and there where I've had a year out or so, and then coaching for the last 3 years now.
Oh, okay, so you're coaching at the moment as well. So who's that with?
Yeah, Beckenham Town.
Okay, and how's that?
Yeah, it's good. It's really enjoyable actually. Again, we've been a little unfortunate. We were top of the league last season when it got null and void, and we fancied ourselves to get promoted into whatever the Ryman League's called now. And yeah, so it's a good setup down there. It fits in well with my job. So yeah, no, it's good.
We've got a couple of comments here. One from Darren. He mentioned Jude Sterling there, obviously referring to you mentioning Jude there. And he had, of course, the ridiculously long throw-in. So he's saying, did the keepers ever have throwing competitions with him?
No, I'd never won. I think even with a one-arm throw, he'd have beaten me. Yeah, no, his throw was ridiculous. It was like a corner. It wasn't just long; it was always flat as well. So yeah it was a real weapon.
And Matt's put in there: is there more pressure on a goalkeeper knowing that it's only one area on the pitch? So if you make a mistake, then it's always going to result in the opposition scoring a goal. Yeah.
I mean it's a fact, isn't it? If you make a mistake, it probably is going to cost. But I think if you worry about that too much, then that's when it's going to have impact. So you just kind of put that to the back of your mind, really. And when it does happen, it's just important not to dwell on it.
That's a fair shout as well. And of course, yeah, that's fair enough. Let's see. What have we got here? So what are your thoughts on Stevenage at the moment? Of course, now a Football League club, and yeah, with the new manager, Alex Ravel, as well, and how Stevenage are doing, especially on the back of the kind of past few months, really getting a few wins together and kind of even moving up the table a bit now.
Yeah, I mean, I was really pleased. As I said, you can see kind of behind the scenes for a long time now. The club's was set to become a professional club, and I think it was Graham was definitely at the time. Graham Westhead was definitely the right person to do that and take them to that next level, and I'm pleased that they've managed to kind of stay at that level and even go a little bit higher. I've kind of not seen too much, but do keep an eye out, and I think it'd be good again if they can start knocking on the door for a promotion back into League One again. But yeah, and also I believe they've had a bit of ground development and things.
Yeah, with the North. Yeah, the North stand is now a proper stand. It's now the same as the away stand. It's a lot more. I think it's 2,000 odd in there now, whereas before you could get you're lucky if you get 200. So
yeah. No, I did watch one of the games early this season, the FA Cup game against Concord.
Okay, yeah.
The Chris Haig, who's a young goalkeeper for Concord, who I think is probably going to go on and do really good things. I knew him from my time at Merston. So good to see they kind of pushed them a little bit
all
close.
The way to penalties.
But got through.
And then what have we got on here now? Let's have a look. So yeah, in regards to Stevenage there a bit as well. What are your thoughts on the community side of it, the work that the club are doing in the local community through the pandemic?
It's great. I think that football clubs have such an important role to play within their communities at all levels, but particularly in a place like Stevenage where they are the main club in the area. There's not loads of them around. I mean, I'm in South London now, and you can find a club on every corner pretty much around here.
Yeah.
But where it's been such a kind of focal point in the town, and to be fair, it's always been very good at that. I mean, my time there, away from training, I did a lot of the community stuff in the primary schools with the team there as well. So they've always been really good at that. So I'm not surprised, but it's really good that they are keeping that going for the local community.
And then what were your dealings with, Phil Wallace? Did you have many dealings with Phil, or was it kind of just more the coaching staff? Yeah.
Yeah, more the coaching staff. No, I didn't have very little dealings with him at the time. I think when I signed, he was in America. Even when I signed, he wasn't around. But I mean, I knew him to say hello to, and I did see him a couple of times. I kind of went to a couple of games after I'd left. When a few of the players I played with were still there. I think it was Westy that sorted me the ticket out, actually. But yeah, I didn't have too much to deal with him. But again, I mean, he's someone who's definitely invested a lot of time into the club.
Absolutely,
done a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely, and now they've kind of brought the women on board as well with the Burger King into the women's side of it as well, and that's great for the Stevenage women now as well to kind of have that the same kind of what's the word, sort of just the same kind of bonuses that men have got.
No, I think it's really good. You're seeing it more and more now with other clubs kind of doing that at lower level, but it's great for an actual league club to be doing it. I know someone involved with Lewis who kind of were one of the first to kind of do the on par paying for both the men and women's teams. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult to do the higher you go up, but it is great to see clubs like Stevenage taking that on and kind of leading the way for others.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's in regards to the Burger King deal and everything, it's great publicity for the women as well as the men, especially with the whole changing the name to Burger Queen, and it was just a great kind of thing that the club did.
No, good.
So let's have a look. So you were actually there under Graham Westley for a brief while as well.
About 10 minutes, I think.
but as a coach, you said yourself that you're a coach. So what have you learned off of some of these managers that you played under?
Well, there's been a few, so it's hard to kind of go through them all. I mean, there's straight away with Graham, it was the training changed a little bit, and we'd gone back to doing afternoon. It was afternoons and evenings, so you'd have 2 hours in the gym at the club, and then a run to Sheppelbury to do your football training there. And again, I think certainly at the time, fitness is always a key part, but kind of being fit and organised was what the conference or National League was about then, certainly, and I think to a degree still is now quite a key part of it. And Graham knew that, so there was he was hard on fitness to begin with, and then as I'm not sure actually how long I did actually play there with him, but I kind of, when Lionel Perez turned up, you kind of, when someone of his stature comes in, you kind of know your days are going to be numbered. And certainly at the time, I wanted to be playing minutes. So it was time to go. But no, I'd say I've been fortunate in non-leagues, playing under lots of really good managers. I actually went and played for John Dreyer at Maidenhead the year after.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, John he's a great people person. So kind of, he definitely was very empathetic with players. And then kind of from there played for a guy called John Rains at Sutton, who again was fantastic motivator. We were quite a young team at the time, competing in the first few seasons of the Conference South.
Okay.
So yeah, he was good. And then kind of my longest spell was under Gavin Rose at Dulwich. I had about 8 seasons there. And yeah, I mean, certainly Dulwich was probably where I've spent most of my playing time, and most enjoyable years of my playing time. And probably took most from Gavin in terms of kind of his coaching, and actually a lot of at the time I just finished uni at the time of joining Dulwich, and kind of a lot of the mentality I took from them also in my kind of everyday life as well. So yeah.
Okay, that's and then of course you're as well as playing at not playing, sorry, as well as coaching at the moment, you're teaching as well. So how did you get into that? Was that a career you had alongside playing when you were at Stevenage as well, or?
No, so at Stevenage I was just playing football. I think I'd say I left Oxford United kind of when we found out that there was 3 of us left on the scholarship programme. That again, probably quite unfortunate at the time to not be offered anything. I mean, even with Oxford, I'd had 2 appearances in the first team, and kind of had sat on the bench a little bit for them as well. So I did feel I was a little bit unlucky at the time not to kind of be kept on. So yeah, I kind of then left, and I knew, I joined Stevenage with the hope of carrying on a career, but also I think my parents in particular as well were quite keen for me to kind of start thinking about backup. So I did a personal training qualification, worked in gyms for a couple of years, didn't really enjoy that too much, and was still doing some coaching for kind of football coaching in holiday camps and things like that. And just felt that actually that's what I enjoyed more. So I think I was 22 and went to Brighton University while I was playing for Sutton. So kind of that's when it kind of duelled, and work, football and career kind of moved side by side. So yeah. So and then as I say, I joined Dulwich and I was in my first year of teaching at 27. And been doing it 11 years now, which is flown by.
And of course, going back to the fact you said you did a bit of coaching you did a bit of coaching with the kids and stuff as well. What sort of advice would somebody like yourself who's played the game pass on to these kids?
There's so much you can say, but obviously dedication is really important. So remaining disciplined at all times, and kind of not getting too disheartened on poor advice. If you're working hard, I think, and doing everything you can, then I think it's easier to accept when things don't work out, if they don't work out. But also, I think hard work is the key to success in anywhere. So I think it's really important. You could, if it doesn't work out somewhere, it doesn't mean give it up. You just keep trying, keep working hard, and someone's opinion will be different from somebody else's.
Okay, and how would you keep yourself focused and sort of prepared for games as well in the coming days, sort of beforehand? Sort of the Thursday, Friday sort of time.
That's probably what I should have done a bit more. I mean, it's going back that far is quite difficult, and it probably at that age probably didn't help going into knowing I was playing, because to have too much time to think about it wasn't necessarily always a good thing. So actually, I think kind of the advantage of part-time football is you don't really have that much time to think about it, because you finish work on a Friday evening, you relax, and it's Saturday morning. So I mean, there was always a little bit of thought before a game on a Friday, night, and kind of just take it easy. And then Saturdays have always been kind of the whole day is about football. So it's not just a case of turning up at 1:30. And particularly the older I got, the earlier I need to get to games to stretch. And as I say, when you're 6'4", it's kind of not easy always to stay kind of limber and flexible. So yeah. So I mean, particularly at the end towards when I was at Dulwich, turn up at midday for a good stretch and a little jog on the treadmill before being able to do anything else.
Fair enough. Yeah. And what do you make of, obviously, the fact there's, games still being played now without fans, and obviously, is that something that you ever took part in, sort of games behind closed doors? Did you play many of them?
Yeah, a few kind of reserve team games where it would, you'd be playing in kind of big empty stadiums. So I remember the first reserve team game I played for Oxford was at Fratton Park, which exactly that sort of atmosphere. Not many people turning up, so very echoey. And kind of again, as you younger, you don't mind it so much, but I can imagine it's quite difficult if you're used to playing in front of big crowds to have that motivation still. I think it's actually quite impressive to still motivate yourself. But I do think it's probably the cause of some of the stranger results that you see in some of the kind of the random high scoring games when you'd possibly rely on that motivation from crowds. But in terms of it going on, I think it's I think to a degree, if it's being done safely and the testing's taking place, I think football does have, I think it's the right argument that football does have a place to play in people's mental health and well-being. Appreciate not everybody's mental health and well-being, but kind of playing at a level where we haven't played since October now. And only had a few months, obviously, between the last lockdown and this one. It is tough not having that kind of routine and structure and kind of just that time away from life as well. Kind of just give you that little escape that football gives you.
And what do you make of, just a sort of side question alongside that as well, is what do you make of the fact that Conference North and South have now come out and declared null and void as well?
I think it's the right decision, if I'm honest. It's not. I can understand why those people that aren't happy with it are kind of kicking off about it. I know. I say last season when we were top of our league with Beckenham, we were absolutely livid. They null and voided it when we played kind of nearly 80%, if not a little bit more of 80% of the season. And I kind of feel that. I mean, for me, I think the blame solely is at the feet of the National League. How they could start a season without knowing kind of whether they were going to be able to finish, how long that funding was going to last for. And I don't think it's good enough to say, well, no one would have expected the pandemic to keep going. Surely you plan for a kind of a backup if this was to happen, because whilst you might not have expected it, there was always the possibility it could have happened. And I totally understand why clubs without funding don't want to continue and run themselves into the ground. And then that makes it an unfair competition, because there are teams that were kind of putting scratch teams together, putting young kids out. And whilst it's a great opportunity for them, it is going to impact the end result of the league. So it is frustrating, but null and void was the only way that was the fairest way. Whilst not everyone's going to feel that, it was the fairest way at this stage. I think if more of the league had been completed, I think the mistake was null and voiding things last year from step 3 down, because I kind of think, again, we had the conversation amongst our coaching staff at Beckenham about it, that it could stop again and we'd only play a quarter of the season, which is exactly what happened. And I think we played more than most at that level. And I know people in kind of step 3 and 4 have played 5 games. And I mean, you can't then make a decision on 5 games.
No, of course you can't. It has to be over the course of at least 75-80% of a season. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where they got it wrong at the start of at the end of the last season, and they should have looked to do some promotions then. And I don't think people would have been that upset or as hurt as they feel at the moment because of it.
All right. Let's just see. I think that's probably about enough to do. I think that's going to probably cover everything that I had. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Just finally, what are your sort of relationship? What was your relationship like with the Stevenage fans as well?
It was okay. I think there was one time. I think we had played. I think it was Oxford City. So we had them in an FA Trophy game, and I again was a bit disappointed in my own performance. And it was something that Wayne Turner actually noted to me, was that too often that you could see my feelings and emotions of how I was doing in my body language, and he was big on trying to get me to change that body language. And I think I was walking towards my goal to pick up my towel and water bottle, completely oblivious and probably just swearing to myself at myself. And I think there's a couple of supporters that I was swearing at them who confronted me after the game.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but I can assure you it wasn't. And yeah, I mean, I say again, whilst my time in the area wasn't great, my time at the club and the people involved in the club, they're a passionate bunch. And say at the time as well, in the conference, it was always a bigger, more atmospheric place to play than a lot of the places you played at. So yeah.
And you were just going back. Were you part of that side that got to the trophy as well? You were, weren't you? The final against Yeovil.
No, I joined. It was the year after. So I'd been in training a couple of times just before the final. Just after the final, and then. I think I couldn't, because was Wayne in charge for the final? I can't remember.
He was.
So I'd been kind of training around it, but at the time, Paul Wilson and I think Dean Greygoose were the two keepers before, so they were still involved. So yeah, it was the year after. I think my last game, in fact, was Tamworth. I think in the trophy, and I think they knocked us out, beat us 3-0. And then I think Wesley came in after that. And I remember kind of whilst we lost, I actually felt like I played quite well and was feeling quite thinking, oh, he was in the stands watching. And then turned up to training the next week and Lionel walked in. Really not impressive enough.
But no, like obviously, what was that like to, that's it. Yeah, Darren has said it there. Of course, Lionel was a character. Yeah, in fact, it was. I've heard a lot of stories about Lionel. Yeah, when he was there.
I would have liked to have got to know him a bit more. But I mean, as I say, at the time, it was kind of when the opportunity to even sit on the bench at games had gone. I needed to go and find some regular football. So I only trained with him a few times. But again, just like you say, an absolute character. And again, only helpful for a young goalkeeper to train with someone of that experience and quality.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, I think, then, Phil. So thank you for taking about 40 minutes out of your evening, and I'll let you crack on, mate.
Cheers. Thanks for your time. Have a good evening.
Thanks a lot. You too,
Cheers,
Phil.
bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.